right, we are recording.
Okay, good evening all. It is 6 o'clock or slightly thereafter. This is the December 3rd, 2020 meeting of the Historic Preservation Advisory Board, and will now come to order. I'm not going to specifically take a roll call from this position because it's already been noted by staff Jessica and whoever else. We do have a quorum. And the reminder, please identify yourself before speaking. This meeting is being held virtually because of the COVID emergency, as I'm certain everybody is aware. So the first item on this evening's agenda is citizen participation for items not otherwise on the agenda. Do we have any members of the general public present who would like to address the board? Hearing none, I will move forward. The first agenda item then is the approval of the meetings for the previous meeting, and we also need to approve minutes from back in November of last year. Does anyone have any additions or complaints about the minutes as presented?
No, other than I'll be abstaining because I wasn't attending.
Sure.
I move that we accept the both of the minutes packages.
I second.
Thank you. Hearing approval and a second, we will so note it and move forward. And I will move to my second sheet. I have to have a crib sheet. I'm a little slow. So the next agenda item will move to the agenda items, of which we have two tonight. The first is a landmark application for the Novak cabin up in the Meeker Park area. And I would note that we did receive a email in support from a Kit and Wenda Fuller of Meeker Park. And at this point, I will turn it over to staff.
So this is Denise Grimm with the land use staff here with docket HP 200005, the Novak cabin at 11482 Peak to Peak Drive. And the applicant is Catherine Burton, and we're here to determine if the property qualifies for designation, to determine if the application is complete, and to formulate recommendations for the county commissioners. As indicated, Catherine Burton is the applicant. She's submitted the request to designate the cabin on the property. There's also an undated shed and an undated outhouse on the property, but they're not included in this request. The property was part of the holdings of H.G. Knowles and O.L. Deaver, who together with their wives planned to build a resort on the Meeker Park area to operate in the summer months. Construction of Meeker Park Lodge began in 1929, and the Deavers soon bought out the Knowles and continued to build or acquire cabins and outbuildings over the next few decades. And then as the Meeker Park Lodge operation grew, visitors came from all over, and many of them returned year after year. Some stayed in the lodge or rented a cabin, while some eventually bought a plot of land from the Deavers to build their own summer cabin in the Meeker Park area, with the Deavers selling land to nearly 80 families. Most of the privately owned cabins are located on the west side of the highway. The cabin was built in 1936, presumably by the Deavers, and was sold to Janice Shaw in 1939. In 1956, Janice sold the cabin to her sister and brother-in-law, Catherine and John Novak. The property has stayed in the family now for over 80 years and is currently owned by the great niece of Janice, Catherine Burton, and her husband Pletcher. The cabin was constructed in a vernacular log cabin style with seemingly button pass around corners. A large stone chimney is located on the front of the cabin. A shed-roofed addition was added on the east side in 1964, and a wraparound porch was added in 1971. In October of 2019, the county landmarked the Meeker Park Lodge Historic District with 26 contributing structures on 6 parcels that were all owned at the time by the Deaver family. And although not a member of the district, the Novak cabin would contribute to the district if added, and would probably contribute to the National Register district if one was created. In August, we considered docket SE 190016, the Novak boundary line adjustment, which was referred to a subcommittee of HPAB. The first round of the cabin to be eligible for landmark, or they first found the cabin to be eligible for designation under criteria 4 and 8, and then reviewed the subdivision exemption. The subcommittee was reluctant to ask for landmark status for the cabin as a condition of the SE approval because they felt that it was just a simple boundary line adjustment. However, the representative for the owner said that they were fine with landmarking as long as that didn't hold up the subdivision exemption process. So we have found that the property qualifies for designation under criteria 4 and 8. It's significant as a good example of good vernacular log construction. And the cabin is significant for its association with Meeker Park's development as a tourist resort during the first half of the 20th century and to Boulder County's Meeker Park Lodge Historic District. Staff is recommending that you approve and recommend that the county commissioners approve the docket under criteria 4 and 8 and subject to our 2 standard conditions describing when a certificate of appropriateness is needed. And I can run through some illustrations here. This is a map which shows the location of Meeker Park in the northwest part of the county, and an aerial showing where this property is located. And sort of showing the layout of the property. And then this is the application form, which you all had available to read. I'll find the photos here. So this is the north elevation of the cabin. Let me see, did I miss the photo? Let me just double check. Yeah. Okay, yeah, the north, and then another closer shot of the north. And then moving around to the south side with the stone chimney. And the east elevation. And the west. And then we do have a photo of the shed. And a couple more. And then the outhouse. And then just a few general ones of the site. And that's it.
Okay, at this point, if the applicant would care to make any comments, although they're certainly not required, they would be welcome at this time.
I don't have any comments. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Are there any comments from the general public regarding this docket? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to move forward with the landmarking recommendation.
Can ask a question first?
Certainly.
This is Marissa. Denise, where does this cabin, like, how close is it to the current historic district, the Meeker Cabin Historic District? Is it possible to see on one of those aerial maps?
I don't know if it's going to show up there, but I can try to pull it up on the computer. If
Denise, it is visible in one of the aerials in the packet.
okay,
It's about 0.3 miles from Meeker Park Lodge.
Jessica, do you know exactly where that would be in there?
Yeah, just keep going when right above there. There.
That one? Or
Yeah,
one?
right. So that green part on the east side of the highway there, and how it runs down to the south there. On the southern part of it is where the Meeker Park Lodge is. Of course, it's several parcels in that area are part of that landmark.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
I would say that even if this wasn't quite a contributing resource to that historic district, I would still be in favor of recommending and approving that it was landmarked for the county, because it does seem to be a very excellent example of that vernacular log cabin structure that you see all along the Peak to Peak Highway, and which I think needs to be preserved.
I would agree with that as well.
Yeah, and I can move in that general direction as well.
I can second or third that emotion.
This is Caitlin again. Do you want me to say the whole thing though?
Yeah, I don't think we have a formal motion yet. So Caitlin, if you would like to do that, would be welcome.
I move that we recommend to approve the docket HP 200005, the Novak cabin, under criteria 4 and 8, and subject to the following conditions. Alteration of any exterior feature of the structure will require review and approval of a certificate of appropriateness by Boulder County, and that regular maintenance, which prolongs the life of the landmark using original materials or materials that replicate the original materials, will not require review or a certificate of appropriateness. Do I need to do the rest of that one?
That's good.
Okay, cool. Could somebody second?
I can second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any objections? So it has been moved and seconded and approved to recommend to the county commissioners that the Novak cabin be approved for landmark designation. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine, for joining us today. And I think we now have that scheduled with the county commissioners, and that should be a pretty quick meeting. So thanks again for nominating the property.
Okay, thank you very much.
So, and that is scheduled for, I think, the second half of January with the Board of County Commissioners, but I'll let you know more about that as we get closer.
So moving forward, the second agenda item for this evening is regarding site plan review for the deconstruction of, excuse me, I should give you the numbers first. This would be SPR 20-0079, the Franklin Commons project in the Old Town Niwot Historic District. And this has been noticed in various manners and was actually the subject of a HPAB subcommittee a couple of years ago. So it's a site plan review for the deconstruction of an existing 3,690 square foot fire dam construction, excuse me, the new construction of a 5236 square foot mixed use building containing 5 residential units and et cetera, and then an addition and adaptive reuse of the historic Bader House. And it's been through the NIWAT Design Committee, an HPAB subcommittee, and another NIWAT Design Review Committee on February 18th. And at this point, I will turn it back to Denise.
So good evening again. This is Denise Grimm with the Community Planning and Permitting staff. And as Chuck indicated, this is docket SBR 200079 as a referral, and then as well a certificate of appropriateness docket CA 200015. And the role of the board as a referral body for the site plan review is to review and comment on the site plan review process and any development proposals which could affect historic properties eligible to be designated, which this one is already designated. In addition, their role is to determine if the proposal meets the criteria for a certificate of appropriateness, since the property is within the Old Town Niwot Historic District, which has specific design criteria requiring a certificate of appropriateness, and the Bader House is a contributing historic resource as well. So the district was created originally in 1993 and has gone through a few different rounds of amendments over the years, most recently between 2018 and 2019. The 1900 Bader House is a contributing resource. The structure behind it was a non-contributing resource. The district has detailed design criteria outlined in the land use code for both contributing and non-contributing structures. The Bader House has folk Victorian influences. Its roof is a medium pitched front gable with side wings with gable roofs on the same pitch, having been added through the years. It appears as though a porch was enclosed along the front facade of the house at some point in time. It's 2 stories with double hung windows on both the first and second floor. A small covered porch emphasizes the entrance to the west side of the building. There's scallop detailing under the gables, which gives the house its Victorian appearance. Horizontal wood siding clads the wood frame building. And then in 1994, actually, the wood siding was covered by vinyl siding. On November 6, 2019, a subcommittee meeting of the board met with Terry Palmos, the current owner, and gave feedback on plans for the property. Their feedback included that they were fine with the proposed residential use of the new structure, but they would like the square element of the Franklin Street elevation changed to more of a gable appearance. They suggested that the gable over a recessed balcony to replicate what is over the entrance to the Bader House might be appropriate. And they asked for removal of the brick gable from the rubbish storage enclosure along the alley, with a replacement with something that was a little more subdued. It was stipulated that the proposed addition to the north or the southeast side of the Bader House would be discussed later, and that the final plans would need to be approved by the full Historic Preservation Advisory Board. The criteria for alterations under a certificate of appropriateness are listed in your report. And then we also attached the detailed design criteria that exists for the Niwot Rural Community District. And then on November 17th of this year, staff gave the following feedback and request for more information to the applicant. One being that for the addition to the Bader House, we appreciated that it was bumped back slightly from the front wall, but we'd like to see it pushed back a bit farther from the Second Avenue side so that the first little window on that side would be revealed and could be retained. The renderings didn't show the moving of the entrance and the ADA ramp, but the line drawings did. And so we wanted clarification on what was being proposed for the Franklin Street entrance and the ADA ramp, with any other changes you know, and also then any other changes that they might be proposing to the house. Let's see. The street level windows on the new building, we asked to be more either, you know, revised to be more vertically oriented, because that is one thing that's called out in the design criteria, or having some type of kick plate underneath to create more of a vertical element than the square windows that are currently proposed on that elevation. And I can sort of run through some additional information here. This is the information on the referral. I'll kind of flip through to the drawings. So this is the proposal for the mixed use building, and then also for the Bader House, and this is the south elevation. So it's the, you know, this is the entrance to the Bader House. They are proposing to move the door over some. It's currently centered under this covering, and they're proposing to move it to the right. And then they're also proposing, I believe, a ramp to that. I'm not concerned about the ramp. I am somewhat concerned about moving the door over. So that will be one thing you'll all want to consider, whether or not you are concerned about that issue or not. And then in terms of the new building, this is the new building, and it shows the revised proposal. And then this is the north elevation, which faces the alley. Of both the Bader House and the new building. This is the south elevation of the mixed use building. Is that the south? Yeah. So this is the south elevation without the Bader House in front of it, and this is what it looks like with the Bader House here in front of it. So. And then this is the east elevation, and this is where we'd like this pulled back a little bit farther, because there is a window here that we'd prefer to see retained. And floor plans, I'll flip down to the renderings here. So this is the current proposal. You know, before they had a 2-story element, brick element here, so that's been reduced, and a gable up here. So it, I think that's an improvement over what we saw before. And then this is the Bader House facing 2nd Avenue. And again, this is the part back here we'd like bumped back just a little bit more. And a rendering of the Franklin Street side. Again, the rendering doesn't show the door having been moved over. But that would be one thing we want to discuss tonight to see how folks feel about that. And then these are those square windows that were discussed that we would want to see a more vertical appearance to those, either by changing the dimensions of the windows or putting a kick plate underneath or something to make them not look perfectly square. Again, and that goes back to the design criteria in effect for the district. But they did, make the trash enclosure here less prominent. So I think that's an improvement. So I definitely think it's moving in the right direction. So I don't know if the board has any other specific questions right now before we turn it over to see if the applicants have anything to add. These are some photos of the building here.
I have one question, Denise.
Uh-huh.
I think you requested that the addition to the Bader House be moved back. Has that been done relative to the last time you've seen it?
No, we don't have anything updated since we mentioned that to them in mid-November.
Thank you.
And then these are the drawings that were from the version that we saw last winter that we asked them to revise. So you can see that, they've brought this down, they put a gable up here, simplified the trash enclosure. So, it's definitely moving in the right direction. So is there anything specific the board wants to see in terms of the drawings or any other questions?
Yeah, I do think that the improvements, like Denise mentioned, are significantly better than before. It's not quite as overwhelming. It would be interesting to listen to the applicant here in a few minutes, explain a little bit more about that addition to the back of the Bader House, and also maybe address some of the other concerns a bit. I agree. I don't like the idea of moving the front door on the Bader House. So at this point, let's hear from the applicant, and then we will follow that up with board discussion / questions back to the applicant from the board.
You bet. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Can everybody hear me? Am I online here? Thank you for everybody for taking the time to get on the meeting here tonight. I appreciate you guys looking at the plans and taking the time to evaluate everything. My name is Terry Palmos, and I'm with Palmos Development. We are a Boulder-based real estate company, started in the 60s, second generation real estate person, kind of grew up in the business. And like I said, we're based in Boulder. We've been wanting to get into Niwot for a really long time. I've always loved Niwot. I've been going out there my whole life, and had a chance to buy the Lockwood building just across the street, but we were unsuccessful maybe a year or two ago. And then when the Bader House came available, we really were aggressive in purchasing the property because I personally think it's one of the best corners in Old Town Niwot and downtown Niwot. I think it has tremendous character, tremendous potential. Went there a lot when it was Colterra. Love the patio. I think that's one of the highlights of the street is that corner flagstone patio that wraps around to the south and the west. And just really wanted to bring the corner back to life. Our number one goal was to turn it around. I know that the prior owner, after the fire, was really hard and devastating for them. And it was very difficult for them to get something done there. And so we feel like we owe it to the town, ourselves, in the community to really make this something special, as we see it as one of the most unique and prominent corners in all of Old Town Niwot. So with that said, maybe when was it? November? Let's see, I'm looking here. The prior design that we came up with, I'll take a few minutes and just talk about that. So the idea was to turn the Bader House into a restaurant. That was the goal. Take advantage of the patio, activate the corner, have outdoor seating, events. I don't know how many people have called me saying, hey, we got married there. I had my anniversary, this, that, the other, all these wonderful stories that I've heard in the last year or so since we've owned the property. All these people are very excited for it to get up and running again. So our goal from the beginning was to turn the Bader House into some type of a food and beverage use. Keep it commercial, obviously, preferably a food and beverage use. Again, to utilize the outdoor seating and the character of the home. If any of you have been in there, it has tremendous character, feels great. It's a real nice setting. You can just envision small tables with candles, and it's just a great place. So we want to turn that into a restaurant. That was in the old proposal and continues to be in the new proposal. In an effort to do that, the Bader House itself is only about 1,000, 1,200 square feet, something like that, as it sits today. In an effort to turn it into a food and beverage use, preferably a restaurant, we proposed to add about 400 square feet onto the east side, basically in between where the existing house is and the building to the east. It's kind of tucked back in there. And the idea there is so we can put a full kitchen with a hood and everything that you need in a kitchen. So that's about a 400 square foot addition that we're proposing. And again, that was when restaurants were right there. Denise, perfect. That's when restaurants were rolling. Obviously, right now it's a completely different world in restaurant land. And my goal is still to make it a restaurant. It just may be much later. I think we need to see what happens in the restaurant industry and the fallout and the demand after we get hopefully to the other side of this pandemic. So the goal is still to do that, but it may be kind of down the road, if you will. That 400 square foot addition, again, was intended to be for a kitchen, and then it ties into the house through an internal door, a couple of ADA bathrooms in there, a bar that we're proposing. That's all on the inside, obviously. But that addition would make it a lot easier for it to be a restaurant because we'd be able to put a full kitchen in there and still maintain some interior dining space, acknowledging that most of the dining space will still be outside on the patio. So that was the objective from step one, and all the various groups that we talked to, the neighbors, the neighborhood meeting we had, the former Niwot Design Review Committee, the current Design Review Committee, the second time through the Design Review Committee, HPAB subcommittee, all were pretty supportive of that. So we didn't really change that in this next round. However, on the building to the north, which is currently the fire damaged brown building, the original proposal was 100% residential. It was 4 small studio units, about 550 square feet, and then a larger, roughly 1,600 square foot, 2-story townhome facing Franklin Street. That was the use. So it was 100% residential. The architecture was more modern. I think Denise had a few pictures there a while back. More squared off, a lot of brick, full 2 stories, more of a contemporary look, some columns at the bottom, that type of thing. I think Denise will get, there you go, right there. There it is. So you can see here it's more vertically integrated, a lot of 2-story brick. It just was a little more modern. And as we took this plan around all the various groups, and candidly, as it was sitting on my wall in my office and me looking at it every day, it became really apparent that that wasn't the right look. So we went back and we modified it, both the architectural pieces and the use, because one of the overwhelming responses we got from all the various groups was, we want that building to have commercial space facing Franklin Street. It was very important to everybody that we talked to. I think except the HPAB subcommittee. I don't know that they pressed on that very hard, but everybody else really wanted commercial on street level for sure. So and then various architectural changes. So we modified it to what you're seeing now, not on the screen, Denise. If we could go to page 33, I think. There we go. So we modified it pretty significantly. The main changes to the uses were we reduced the two-story townhome, a 1,700 square foot two-story townhome that was facing Franklin. We took out the first floor of that and turned that into commercial space. So now you can kind of see there's two kind of sign areas, if you will, or two awnings there, two entrances. Those are each about 550 square feet each, 500 square feet each, something like that, with a shared bathroom. We designed those to be on the smaller side because one of the things we heard from many of the businesses, many of everybody in downtown Alma was that the monthly rent was really expensive for a lot of the existing commercial spaces. And if we could provide something that was more affordable, there are a lot of smaller businesses that don't need a lot of square footage, but they really just need a storefront. They just need a place for people to walk into. They do a lot of online sales, but people are more comfortable if they could have a storefront. So we designed the commercial space to be really potentially 1,000 square foot space or two 500 square foot spaces, which would allow, I think, a variety of smaller locally owned businesses to be able to locate there and have their monthly rent be very reasonable in the bigger picture of what monthly rent is up and down Second Avenue in the Old Town District, in the historic district. So it's set up to be either one or two spaces. The space there with the more flat roof, the flat storefront has a door connecting to the flagstone patio to the south. So in a perfect world, if the Bader House was a restaurant and then there was a bagel shop or a coffee shop or some other type of use that could utilize the new commercial space and utilize that flagstone patio, we could really activate that area, and I think it would be really nice. The upper level of the building is still residential, albeit a much smaller, again, maybe 600 square foot studio unit. So now in the north building, I call it the mixed use building, we've got commercial space, retail office space, likely retail facing Franklin, and then residential above and next to it by way of 5 smaller studio type units, all about 500, 550 square feet. There are 5 parking garages off the alley to service the residential units. They have some balconies and whatnot to create some outdoor living space. We like the smaller residential units for a lot of reasons. I think it's pretty well documented that in urban areas, if they're more residential that's downtown, the better downtowns get. People can live close to where they work, close to where they recreate, close to where they do their errands and all that type of stuff. So having more people living downtown, especially in this type of product where it's going to be a smaller studio unit, much less expensive than a lot of what's available right now in Niwot. From an architectural perspective, we tried really hard to soften everything up. We got a lot of feedback saying we want it to kind of match the Bader House, mix in with the Bader House better, more of a gable roof, less brick, more siding to match the Bader, even the same color. We kind of used a different shade of yellow there, kind of blended in. Just soften it up, more pitched roofs, less mass on the street, and things of that nature. So I feel like we did a pretty good job of doing that, and just kind of making it look a little more like the Bader, or making it blend in a little better. Now it's a little more cohesive, I think, anyway. And the feedback we've gotten from the Niwot Design Review Committee and some of the neighbors that I've talked to are overwhelmingly positive. They really like the changes we made. They like the commercial space. They like the architectural feel as opposed to the prior plan. So we feel really good about some of the things we've done. As far as staff's comments that we've had so far, I don't see any problem doing any of those. We haven't done them yet because I wanted to have this meeting and get all the feedback so we could integrate, what we could into the plan. As far as changing the windows on the commercial space of the mixed-use building, that's no problem at all. Happy to do it. It's obviously not shown here, but we'll do that for sure. One of the questions I have for Group is the actual Bader House. We're in a place where, in order to utilize the Bader House for anything really, we need to make it ADA accessible, as it currently is not. And to do that, we either need a ramp, which I think is shown on the drawings here, leading up to the front porch, or a lift. We can go either way. The other piece to that is, well, there's 3 pieces. There's the entrance, which which is the ramp to the front door. There's the front door, and then there's ADA bathrooms. I think we've got the ADA bathrooms inside figured out. There's kind of a logical location for them. It's on the inside, so I know it's not super prudent to this discussion, but the front door is prudent. The issue here is this is one version of a ramp. There's a few different ones, and then we could get rid of the ramp and put a lift in if that would be preferred by the group. The front door, if you notice here, it's kind of hard to see on my phone anyway, but there's a set of stairs immediately as you walk in on the left, and there's a newel there, a stair newel. And in order to get the appropriate clearance for ADA accessibility, that door currently where it's sitting, I believe, is 2 feet 8 inches wide, going from memory here, but I'm pretty sure that's right. And it would need to be, I think, 3 feet wide, and I forget, and or moved to the right some, so you could clear those stairs when you go inside. So that's something I'm looking for some feedback on. What the committee would prefer, would like to see. Widen the door, move the door to the right, not touch it. Of course, that would impact ADA accessibility, but I've been told that in some instances, historic, I don't want to speak out of turn. I'll just wait to hear back from what everybody wants. And then also the ramp going up to the front entrance versus a lift. And then, one of the other thing staff suggested was the addition on the east side to make it a little smaller, so the window there in the, I'll call it the dining room, could be exposed. We can certainly do that, and if it's critical to the historic value, I'll do it. The consequence of that is the kitchen gets smaller, and it's already pretty small, so it may limit the type of potential restaurants. And again, when I say restaurants, I'm thinking way down the road here. Given what's going on, I think there's going to be a lot of dust that needs to be settled in restaurant industry. But I think having a smaller kitchen there will potentially limit the type of restaurant that could go there. Again, to me, the historic value trumps, the type of restaurant. So if everybody wants me to make that smaller and expose that window, I'll be happy to do it. There's just maybe some consequences down the road to how big of a kitchen you can have, and then that affects what kind of restaurant you can have. What else can I tell you? I think that about covers what I have. If you guys have any questions or any comments, I'd love to hear them and be happy to do whatever we need to do to get this moving forward.
Terry, this is Caitlin McKenna. Could you show us so Denise has the first floor plan of the Bader House up right now, and I'm seeing here, it looks like the front door, if it's the one on the left and bottom right there, yeah. It looks like it's centered in that photo, and I'm not quite understanding the problem that moving it will solve.
Honestly, I don't know if that's an as-built, like what's there today, or if that's what's proposed to be done in order to make it ADA accessible. I'm not an architect up to speed on everything. I was just told by the building department at the county and my architect that in order to make that, you have to get a wheelchair through there, that door needs to be widened or moved. That's what I was told.
Okay, but presumably this architecture is that's the firm that you've used to come up with your architecture plans, correct?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Is Osmosis Architecture
Yes.
that you
Yes.
hired?
Yes.
So this to me looks as though the back side, that's the pop out that you want a kitchen to be in. Is that correct? On the right side of
Yeah, over there. As you're looking at the plan, we're looking at on the right side, on the far right side.
Yeah.
You kind of see a kitchen layout in there.
Yeah. And then on the left side, the front door is centered, right? And if somebody came in, I could see how the front door could still be maybe too small there, but I am still confused about why we would need to shift it in order for it to be ADA compliant.
I think because you
I
need a
don't know.
certain amount of space for the door to open so that when you come up from the ramp, you can maneuver into the door. So I do think the door has been moved slightly to the bottom of that entryway as opposed to being centered. So I think that's what we're trying to solve for.
Yeah, that's correct. You need not only the dashed kind of rectangle he's shown there, but you actually need a little bit of more space to the right-hand side on the inside of the door to access the handle. So I think what they've got there looks ADA compliant to me.
I think that's correct.
I know historic buildings and ADA compliance are always very challenging. I'm wondering, I don't like the idea of moving the door. I'm just wondering, maybe Denise and Jessica, what our options are for getting an exemption to that because it's this historic building, if that's possible, or if that's something that we could talk further about.
So, I think that the building folks, if there's any way at all to make something accessible, it's going to be required. And so I think that really what they probably have to look at would be options to not have this be the ADA entrance. I think that if we wanted to find a solution that didn't require moving and widening this door, we'd have to, say, look for a solution that puts the entrance to the restaurant, back here or somewhere where you could get a wider door that didn't impact the historic nature of the building as much. I think you could find, another way into the structure potentially to be, one of the entrances to the building, if we wanted to keep this one centered the way it is now.
Denise, is the door, or maybe Terry, you know this, is the door that's there now, the actual door, is that historic in nature?
I don't know. Denise, what do you think?
I've got some photos here. 1 second. See if I can find that. So it's this door here. Well, let's see. Let me go back. Nope, I'm looking at the wrong side. It's this door here that we're talking about, because that's the side that now has the little covering over it there, which is,
There it is.
yeah.
That's it.
So the door, has, that opening and that door has been there. This little shed covering over that door is, something later than that first photo I showed. But but being centered under this gable is, is how this door here is, if that answers your question.
But it seems to me that it'd be more important to have it centered than to worry too much about the actual width, because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't see a whole lot of special fenestration or whatever around it. So perhaps a solution would be to just widen it in position. I don't know if that would still meet the ADA stuff or not, merely a suggestion or an idea.
It won't meet the ADA because the door has to swing back far enough so that there is no obstruction in the place as you're going through with a wheelchair or with a walker, depending on the kind that the person was using.
Yeah, I think one of the main problems is this newel post here to the stairs is sort of, constrains the radius that you need to get through there. So I think it makes it difficult to use this as the ADA entrance. I think, looking at a different location for an ADA entrance, or turn some other location into the primary entrance to the restaurant, would be solutions that might work.
Well,
Sure.
can I weigh in? Denise,
What was that?
can I weigh in? Can I comment?
Yeah.
Well, an option to move the ADA entrance to a different location would be the door right on the very, very south side. It's not the covered door, but there's another door there on the south side of the building, kind of facing Second Avenue. Well,
This one here?
Yes, right there, exactly. We looked at preliminarily making that the ADA entrance, but it would have similar consequences. You'd have to make the door wider, you'd have to have a ramp, in a what I consider to be a more visible place because it's facing Second Avenue, and it's kind of, I know the entrance is facing west currently, but it's not nearly as visible as the front of the house as you drive by or walk by. So we played around with making that ADA accessible, and we had, I think, some things that may work. But we felt that if we're going to adjust things and put a ramp in or a lift or whatever, we kind of go with, we'll get some feedback on the ramp versus lift. We thought it'd be better to be kind of around the side where it's not as visible. That was our thinking. But I'll leave it up to you to tell me.
This is actually one of those times where I feel like my feelings towards people trump my feelings towards architecture. And allowing people of all abilities to use the front entrance, I am starting to be swayed in that direction over keeping something centered.
I concur as well. I think the door is still in the same element and it's relatively close to its original location. I think it's a shame to move it, but I think at the expense of having to put an accessible entrance around the back or to some alternate location, I'd be in favor of what they're proposing here, and the ramp as well.
I agree.
Yes.
I think the challenge to using that other door, while it does look better on the drawing, I think you're right in that it's more visible from, the main street. And so I like the idea of having the ramp on the back and being able to use the front door, even if we do have to move it slightly.
Jason, if you're talking, you're muted.
Jason, you're muted.
It's probably a good thing that I'm muted. Can you show the image again of the offset door?
Okay. Yeah. Where it's proposed to move to? You mean?
Yes, please.
So the elevation that shows that?
Yeah, the elevation, please.
Whoops. So it's this right here. So it's shifts to the right slightly and it's widened slightly. So, it's not a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I could live with that, actually. It doesn't look all that bad. I would keep it as centered as much as possible. And I would like to see you look more towards the lift than those long obtrusive rampways. However, they can be mechanically problematic.
Yeah.
And perhaps we could, I'm sorry for jumping in, but perhaps you see those little railings? If the railings could be adjusted to enhance the location of the door as well as the little step up, I think if those things were all that design alter to line up with the door, including the step up to the door, that might be a little more convincing.
No problem. I would love to get a little feedback on ramp versus lift.
Yeah, so did anyone else have thoughts about going with a ramp versus a lift?
Well, as I mentioned,
No, go ahead.
as I mentioned, I think I'd rather see the ramp. By the time you usually get the lift in there and the clearances required around it, I think they can be unobtrusive or more so than a ramp.
Could be.
And that's close to my comment. The ramp will eventually blend in your head to look like it belongs. But the mechanical things of a lift will always look like a mechanical piece that has been added on because it was required.
I understand. No problem.
I prefer ramp as well.
Yeah, mechanical lifts can be problematic. And so, yeah, even though I think they're grossly ugly, I would probably vote for the ramp.
I mean, it's going to be a pretty gradual ramp. I mean, it's not a very, you know, tall threshold that the ramp needs to go up to, that basically one step. So I think it'll look basically just like an additional section of railing more than anything. So I don't think it'll look bad to have a ramp.
I would encourage you making its trim fit with the rest of the trim that's used, i.e. the railing and the spindle design, etc.
No problem.
Also, per Jason's comment, because that kind of the gable and the railing aren't part of the actual historic structure and were added later, I do like the idea of changing the railings a bit to make it look like it's more centered, even if we're moving the door. I think that would help, and because they're not part of the original structure, I am okay with changing those as well.
Sure.
Really agree with that.
Okay. So let me understand that, and I know Denise taking notes, so am I. So what we're saying is we're moving the door a little bit to the right, probably widening it, and with that, we want kind of the spindles and the entrance and the step up kind of shift to the right a little bit as well, so it looks more connected, more in line. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So it sounds to me like we've pretty much ended the board's discussion and feedback. I think that was very good. Are there any members of the general public that wish to comment at this point?
I've got a couple more questions, actually.
Go ahead.
Regarding the, sorry, my dog is barking. Regarding the kitchen addition to the Bader house.
Yeah.
It seems like when I'm looking at the south elevation on A4.2 that there's been an attempt to repeat the window pattern that is on the south side of the Bader house.
Yes, that's correct.
Hold on just a second.
While we have a second, talking about the kitchen addition, we'll get some feedback on if we should make it smaller or not.
My thought isn't so much to make it smaller, is that, two of those windows, the two to the far right, looks like they'll be behind the insulated wall of the cooler. And so maybe they'll end up being blanked out kind of spandrel glass. And in general, I would say, new additions should not exactly mimic the building they're being added onto, but be somewhat similar to. my thought would be to not exactly try to imitate the front of the Bader House, but to do something a little simpler, maybe not recreate the 6/6 window pattern. And frankly, maybe not even have the two windows to the right that may just end up being kind of blanked out because of the location of a cooler.
Okay.
And then my other thought regarding that is there's going to be at least 1 or 2 hoods and makeup air coming out of that section of the building. It would be nice to be able to have the exhausts on the north side of that ridge so they're not seen from the street.
Yep, I understand and agree.
I think if you use some landscaping in front of that area too, it would, you know, it would help sort of soften the addition. So using some sort of landscaping or something out in this area might be useful as well.
Sure, no problem. That's good feedback. Any thoughts on keeping, and when we say addition, I want to be clear while we're on record here, that's potential addition. Again, until we figure out what's going on in restaurant world, you know, that may not happen for a while, even though that's my goal to make it happen. But in the event it does happen, are we okay with the size of the current addition, or do we want to reduce it to expose that window?
Where is the window right now on this drawing, Denise, that is going away? Is it right?
It's kind of just right in here.
Got it.
I think we'd have to reduce the kitchen, the proposed addition by 4 feet, I think, to expose the window. 4.5 feet, something like that. I think that's what we looked at.
Personally, I think that I would be okay with not having that window in order to make it a more useful facility in terms of the adaptive reuse. If we restrict it too much, we may make it essentially unusable, and that would not be in best interest. Just a personal opinion, I would certainly welcome others' input.
I'm sorry, I'm not quite getting what window we're talking about. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and let me see if I can find it. It's difficult to see in the photos because it looks like there's another window up in this area here, and it's hard to see because of the glare of the sun. And Jessica, did we ever find a better photo of that? I was trying to remember.
There is a better photo in the packet. I'm just trying to figure out where it is. It's still hard to see, but go down with the photos again, please. And keep going. I think, yeah, right there is, yeah, right there. That's the window.
Yeah, it's hard to see because of the vines in this picture, but it's.
I guess I would ask, why is that window important?
I mean, it's just an original architectural feature that, you know, kind of helps define that corner of the building. I mean, it's certainly up to you all if, you know, how, you know, whether or not you all feel it's important to retain that or not.
Denise, if I can comment again. If we get to the point in life, and I think we will, where restaurants are back in business and we can get a restaurant user out there and we can add on this addition and have it to be a usable kitchen, having that extra room would be helpful. I just want to make that comment.
I think if the window could be saved, great, but I wouldn't withhold my approval if we ended up having to cover it to have more space with the kitchen. Kind of ambivalent, I guess.
I mean, I feel the same way, given that we're looking at a photo and can't really see the window. I think its visibility is pretty questionable to begin with. I guess I'm going to throw in one last comment. I strongly recommend following staff's recommendation to add panels below the windows on the commercial buildings along Franklin. I think that proportion would greatly benefit and be more in keeping with commercial architecture in general.
Did you say panels like yeah, I get it.
Yeah, it's like a kick panel or a vanity panel from the sill of the large window all the way down to almost the top of foundation, and rendered in a different material or in the same material but recessed relative to the left and right sides.
No problem. I think it's a great suggestion.
I agree with that as well, specifically because it's called out as part of the Niwot Historic District. Word I'm looking for, guidelines.
Yeah, I would concur.
No problem. That's easy. And I like the addition. I think it'll look better.
So if no one else has anything else to throw in, maybe I'll just summarize where we are. Does that work for folks?
Yes, please do.
So it sounds like from staff's original conditions, we're okay with the door moving and widening slightly, but we do want the railing around that little porch to move the opening over to line up with that door. We're okay with the ramp, and we're okay with not pushing the addition farther back, and we do want to see kick panels or something underneath those square windows to make them look like more elongated features. Does that capture everything that we discussed? And is that?
I guess the only thing I would add is some thoughts about if the addition to the kitchen addition is going to go forward, and it may be sometime down the road, and its exact requirements right now are still a little unknown. Could that come back for review again? Maybe we could memorialize its size and its location, but maybe some details to be reviewed at a later date.
Yeah, we can, if you'd like, we could indicate that future alterations to the plans, like reducing the number of windows and all of those details that we talked about in that addition, we could refer that back to a subcommittee meeting of this board to approve if folks are comfortable with that being looked at a subcommittee level.
I'm
comfortable. I'm comfortable with the subcommittee, and I think it'd be easier for the applicant as well.
Yeah, it'd be quicker.
I'm down with subcommittee.
Agree.
So I think we've come to a resolution on this. Thank you for the summation, Denise. So back again, unless there are further comments, I would invite anyone from the public whom I don't think are there, but if you are, please speak up. Hearing no comment, further comment, I will close the discussion of this and ask Jessica or Denise what we need to do forward. Certainly, we can vote to approve the CA. I'm not sure if anything else is required.
So you should vote on the CA. And then if you have anything in addition to what we're approving as part of the CA that you want relayed back to current planning in terms of referral comments on the project, we can also send those along. Or if your CA approval covers everything you want relayed back, then we'll just use that as your referral response as well.
Okay, at this point, I would entertain a motion for two things: approval of the CA and incorporation of the summary as Denise for the staff has put together.
Give it a shot. So I motion that we approve the certificate of appropriateness docket number SPR 200079 based on the information we said, which was to accept the staff guidelines with the exception that we are okay with moving the door, making some changes to the railing, that we would agree with their recommendation on changing the windows, adding some kick plates, and the addition of the kitchen is also okay if it overlaps the window. However, we would like, if any changes to the plans happen in the future, we would like to push back to a subcommittee for review.
And the only thing I would note is that the docket number you mentioned was just the site plan review number, and this is the CA is the one we really need to vote on.
Gotcha. It was CA number, hang on, I'll get there.
20-0015.
Thanks, Chuck.
I think that was a good recommendation. I would entertain a second.
I can second.
Or third.
Do we need to vote any further?
I
Favor?
think we have it covered,
I don't
Jessica.
think we have voted.
No, I think we have to vote. We've got a motion and a second. We gotta vote now.
Yes. All in favor, please say aye or otherwise
Aye.
indicate.
Aye.
I am in favor. So the quorum is unanimously in support of the motion as presented. Therefore, I consider the item closed. So that completes the discussion of the SPR 20-0079 and CA 20-0015, the Old Town Historic District, et cetera, et cetera. Are there any further items to become before the board for this meeting?
I don't believe so. Jessica, did we have anything else we were going to bring up?
I don't have anything else.
Yeah, I don't have anything that I can think of either.
So at this point, considering that there is no further business, I will close the December 3rd meeting of the Boulder County Historic Preservation Advisory Board, and I get to take my toy hammer.
Everybody, thank you very much. Appreciate your input. We're going to do our best, and stay safe and healthy.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Terry.
Happy holidays to all.
Yeah, thanks.
And Melanie, if you have